Good.
There we go. Dr. Kiltz, welcome to the Primal Foundations podcast.
Tony, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really excited to be here and sharing a really important conversation of humanity's health and wellness.
Yeah, last time we spoke in length, I was actually on your podcast, Carnivore Conversations, and that was episode 76 last August, so almost a year ago. So we're
Yeah,
we're overdue for a convo.
it is crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, I love, again, a physician. I went into medicine to help people. But what I learned is that I was just band-aids. And we gotta figure out the root cause of disease. And that's what we're here to talk about.
Absolutely. And I had the opportunity to kind of talk about my backstory and health struggles. And I know you faced some health issues in the past. Can you share with the listeners what those issues were and how they influenced you to choose a carnivore diet?
Well, I grew up in LA, kicked out of school in a gang, couldn't read, father in jail. That's the elevator speech. I suffered from dyslexia, depression, bowel problems, ADHD, OCD. I mean, I was incorrigible and I was a challenge as a child. Thankfully, I had parents that loved me, took care of me, but a standard eater for years and didn't realize that all my problems actually were secondary to my diet, Mediterranean essentially. But I went into medical medicine. I was inspired by a hippie doctor to go into medicine when I broke my leg at age 19. I didn't have any wherewithal to go into medicine. I didn't study in high school or before that. I was kind of a dropout student in some ways. I loved to work, but once I decided I wanted to go to medicine, I turned it full speed ahead and focused on everything I needed in studying. And I wound up going into medical school, and then I took a OBGYN residency after internal medicine, switched, and then fertility. I've been doing this for years, but through the years, I had problems with arthritis, psoriasis, kidney stones, migraines, bowel bleeding, hemorrhoids, bladder bleeding, anemia, and many of these things, and just didn't know why. So go to the doctors, take all the drugs. I worked a lot on nutrition, a very healthy Mediterranean diet, exercise. I was lean and strong, but I still had problems. And I tripped over paleo diet probably around 20 years ago. And I was like, wow, my patients are getting pregnant on paleo diet. What's this about? And then from there, I found keto, Maria Emmerich. And then 15 years ago, almost, I found carnivore. When I went carnivore, finally, all those things went away. Arthritis, psoriasis, kidney stones, migraines, bowel bleeding, depression, anxiety, gone. And I then went on the quest to figure out why. Why is carnivore kick-ass the very best thing in the universe? And I'm sure you're going to ask questions. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, it just seems that that is this story that we hear from like these anecdotal stories from everybody that has tried carnivore, going in, I'm going to try it for 30 days. It's gotten a lot of popularity and it's from work that you've done. And I've seen you on Instagram Live at 5 in the morning, baby,
Yes.
out there just giving the information. So I think this grassroots is really picking up and a lot of people are starting to give this a try and starting to realize kind of how you're mentioning that the way we've been looking at healthcare and the way we've been doing you know this whole propaganda of what's healthy and what's not, it's a broken system, and we're finding out slowly that it's actually simpler than it needs to be. Like we are making it way more complicated than it actually is.
Occam's razor. The simple answer is the one. We
Hmm.
are looking for complicated uh, questions, why, complicated solutions, but there's something far simpler. We are lions, not pigs, cows, and sheep. And I'm gonna say that's not a conspiracy. It's because we're so used to the way we've lived for so many years, it can't be wrong. We can't be wrong that fruits and vegetables are good for you. They must be, right? They're so healthy looking, right? And so I think the beauty is social media, and the beauty is human beings taking control of their own health and wellness, no longer relying on the doctors, the experts, the authorities, and through so many people like yourself, where we're just sharing stories. And if you think about it, it's like even in the keto carnivore world, we're the studies, and even we're like, well, we got to put out more studies. We got to show the science. But do you believe in God?
Yes, sir.
You have faith in some religious, spiritual philosophy, correct?
Hmm.
Can you prove it to me?
Nope. Can't see it, can't touch it.
Yes, it's called faith.
Yeah.
And so the beauty of the anecdotal stories are we're here because of stories. Human beings have been telling stories to help us thrive and survive, the philosophy of life. And so ultimately, the real science is just in the story and the anecdotal. Your story is more powerful than the scientific research. I'm sorry. I don't need another story to debate whether or not LDL or HDL or cholesterol causes disease, right? Why would something your body makes normally be the cause of disease? Does that make any sense?
What is the I think women's breast milk is the highest, right, in cholesterol. And they were like, that's what we feed babies when they're at very, very young. And it's one of the most cholesterol rich things. And what we're saying, it's bad for us now.
Yeah, yeah. And so then we're even saying, oh, your hormones are bad. Your hormones are fine. The cells that make them and the cells that respond to them are damaged, not the hormones.
Mm-hmm.
And so ultimately, I mean, our hormones require cholesterol and fat. And the reason you don't dissolve in water is because you're made of fat. So our primary structure is made of fat. And so fat is actually the most important molecule in the universe. It's
Liquid,
kind of crazy.
liquid gold right there.
Is liquid gold. And so, you know, the beauty of these stories that we're telling is that they're powerful. I read Marcus Aurelius, I read James Allen, I read the Bibles, I read all of these. They're just stories, but those stories are the most powerful thing in the universe. And I talked to a number of clients today, some that I've already spoken to before. And after years and years and years of treatment, one of them said to me, Dr. Kiltz, I've been doing carnivore now for like 3 months. I've lost 50 pounds. I've never felt better in my life. One of my employees is at least doing keto. And she says, wow, I've never felt better. My skin is clear. Like years and years and years of suffering. And the answer is absolutely right in front of us.
Yes. And I want to talk about something that's definitely in your wheelhouse, infertility.
Yeah.
And according to this is just from the WHO World Health Organization and a study that was in 2023 that 1 in 6 people globally are affected by infertility. Is that number normal or is that kind of a cause for concern?
Well, why are you alive? To reproduce. That's it. And so infertility is the canary in the coal mine. When that canary is dead, something's mightily wrong with the environment. Well, when the number of people that are infertile, both male and female, is on the rise. Again, it always takes an egg, a sperm, an embryo, and an environment, a uterus. So it's always the male, it's always the female. They're both suffering. And they're suffering because of inflammation secondary to a plant-based, low animal fat diet, lean meat diet. It's really as simple. So I'm alarmed. I mean, we're one of the largest IVF centers in America. We're the most affordable, accessible, and integrating in the country, in my opinion, maybe even the world in some ways. But I'm challenged every day in our inability to step back and ask the question, well, what's the cause? And the cause is I don't know. So if the cause is I don't know, how can you know it's not plants?
Yeah, I mean, and you're making these changes. Are you saying that you had people go on paleo or we're trying paleo, we're just getting pregnant, switching them to a higher fat diet? Now, with that, I mean, is that hard to get people to do that? Because somebody that wants to have a baby, I'll try anything. I want you to eat, fatty red meat. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I want an avocado,
Yeah.
which is actually a fruit and not fat. So, and if it's fat, it's plant oils. Plant oils may be toxic for us. So that's kind of interesting one. But it is so we're all fat phobic. And we believe fat is the cause of disease. Even if you don't think it is, your subconscious mind does. So we're all trying to be skinny. And most animals want to get fat for the winter and the hibernation and the migration. So, what are the odds that you and I likely migrated, hibernated, nested, or winterized for the last 3.5 million years, or some number that I don't even know? High. So, being skinny actually is not in your favor for the majority of the environments we live in or have lived in. And so most people still think that adipose tissue is bad for you. Actually, adipose tissue is not damaged or poisonous. It's actually the building blocks and the fuel for your body. But we're afraid of it and we don't eat it. So, yeah, I think the fact that we're just subconsciously and consciously fat phobic because we've been taught to be that way because they linked fat as the cause of disease when in fact sugar and plants are.
And it's more of a symptom, right? Like if you're overweight, that's more of the symptom versus the actual root cause.
Well, as we label obesity, then it is. But if in general you are likely going to have to go through a famine and you need to be fat. But yeah, I think we have a tremendous amount of morbid obesity, excessive obesity, which is obviously a major sign of something going wrong. Interesting enough, mild obesity probably is less so a factor. And I always say if you're 100 pounds heavy and you're walking around and you're functioning normally, you probably have bigger, stronger muscles and bones than most people. You're not weak. You're strong.
And with women that, I'm thinking of, there's certain women, there's two camps to this of, like women who do gymnastics at a very young age, that won't actually have their cycle for a very long time. And there's women that don't have their cycle, or they do, but they're in a lot of pain, but they transfer over to a carnivore diet and they get their cycle back, or it's less painful. Is that just because they've upped the fat and having red meat?
So the cause of infertility for many women is low body fat or high body fat. Now, the high body fat is not the cause. The cause is the sugars that are damaging the organ systems that are responsible for reproduction, the brain, the pituitary gland, the adrenals, and the ovaries and the testicles. And so if you're extra lean, you're bulimic, anorexic, the body needs so much fat in order to function normally because fat is the only fuel for the mitochondria, not sugar. And fat that's in small amounts causes reproductive dysfunction because your body wants to preserve everything it can to keep you alive. So maybe you'll improve your health in order to reproduce. But it's one of the first things to shut down. And a lot of pelvic pain is happening because of pelvic uterine gastrointestinal inflammation secondary to a plant-based diet because the plants feed the microbes in the gut. The microbes in the gut proliferate, they exponentially grow, they make heat, alcohol, aldehydes, and methane gas, which causes inflammation in the gut. And the microbes go out the rectum, anus, and for women, they go into the vagina, the cervix, the uterus, and out into the pelvis, where they cause more inflammation secondary to infection. But many of the chemicals and the substances that are made in the colon also get into those areas and cause other inflammatory reactions. So endometriosis, endometritis, adenomyosis, uterine fibroids, um, bladder inflammation in bladder and kidney infection, interstitial cystitis. I mean, these are very common problems. And then hemorrhoids and bowel bloating, constipation, and other causes of pelvic pain are all secondary to inflammation from a plant-based low animal fat diet, which allows the microbiome, which is not good for you, by the way, to proliferate and then exponentially grow and seek out other places in your body to create their colonies and consume you and kill you.
And can you kind of talk about glycation a little bit? Because the way I kind of like, I'm not a doctor by any means, but the way I kind of have been told about glycation is like that's kind of something that affects aging in the body. But can I get your take on that?
Well, glycation is the abnormal binding of sugars to every cell and structure of your body that causes rust. So we know that when your car rusts or anything rusts, it breaks down more quickly, it ages faster, and it is dysfunctional and or it fails. So if you look at diabetics, now my sister Marianne was a type 1 diabetic since age 4. She died at 52 of heart failure, but through the years she had eye damage, kidney damage, heart damage, and skin damaged, and many other organ system damage, secondary to the higher glucose levels that are circulating in the body, which abnormally bind to things. So if you were to sprinkle dirt or sugar or salt over your beautiful paint job of your Ferrari, would that damage the paint?
Yeah.
So think of the enamel, the paint covering the metal, as the glycocalyx, the sugar layer that protects your body. Well, as it is damaged from what? Sugars and other antigens that are in the air, including pollen, which comes from a plant, which is made of sugar. That's damaging that layer that then allows the breakdown of the metal, the breakdown of your epithelial cells are happening in the same way. So glycation is the abnormal binding of sugars that speed up the breakdown of the layer that protects you and then the cells, which causes damage, disease, dysfunction, and failure. Glycosylation is the normal binding of a sugar to a protein or other molecules. And so most people don't know, and I don't think this is kind of hard to see, but most people don't know that all proteins are post-translationally modified. That means either a hydroxyl group, a methyl group, lipation, acetylation, disulfide bonds, sumylation, ubiquination, phosphorylation, and the one we're talking about is glycosylation. So if a protein doesn't get a normal binding of a sugar onto it in order to give its proper shape, charge, function, pH, your body doesn't function normally, and you either develop a disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, ALS, MS, endometriosis, endometritis. All of these are just damages to your proteins from excessive plant diet, which elevates our overall systemic sugar levels and causes damage and disease, which is called glycation. But the question is, if glucose is not your energy source, what's it for?
This is where I want to get into the weeds here because I'm a big fan of, I like Mark Sesson's work and, Primal Blueprint. And one of the things, as I understand it, is the fuel, the energy for the body is fat, but it could be also carbohydrates. Of course, here we go. I could see you shake your head.
No
But
effing way.
and then we get this. This is how it's been explained a lot. A lot of people are under this impression that metabolic flexibility, that you have the ability to go from a sugar burner to a fat burner, but you see it some way different. Can you explain that?
Well, I read a book. Let me see if I got a copy here somewhere. I had it here earlier. Um, it is called "The World Turned Upside Down" by Richard David Feynman. And basically, a long time ago, I read this book, and it said carbohydrates are never required in the human diet. Okay, well then, if carbohydrates are never required in the human diet, and everyone's being damaged by glucose levels are elevated, and yet, how many people have no fat on their body?
Nobody.
Nobody. And if you see an anorexic, cachectic, sarcopenic person, would you say they're healthy or very ill?
Oh,
Very, very ill,
yeah.
almost dead. Now, when you look at obese people, would you say, oh my God, they're going to die shortly? No, you wouldn't. Right? Because, and if you ever draw your blood and you look at triglycerides, lipids, LDL, HDL, VLDL, chylomicrons, cholesterol, how many people have zero levels in their body? Nobody.
No.
Okay. So if you've got fat everywhere and you've got sugar everywhere, what's the defining factor that says I'm going to burn sugar or I'm going to burn fat? Can you tell me?
I would
Can you?
say if I had from what has been told to me is, whatever you've stored as glycogen in your system, that you're going to use that up first, and then you're going to tap into your fat stores.
Have you ever measured glycogen?
Me personally, no.
So tell me what your level of glycogen is.
No idea.
No idea. Have you ever seen someone with a zero glycogen level?
Can't say I
You
have.
never have. You know
Yeah.
why? Because it's never measured. It's theoretical.
Mm.
So do you think keto carnivore is theoretical? It is. This is the theory. My theory is simple. Fat is always the fuel for the mitochondria, and sugars in the liver via insulin are converted to fat. So everyone says, well, insulin's job is to put sugar into your cells. I bet it's not. Because if you have a liver failure patient, okay, they're still alive, they are almost all, or a significant proportion of them are diabetic. Now they have insulin and they have sugar circulating in their bloodstream in elevated amounts. How come they're skinny and cachectic? Don't know.
Don't know.
Okay, so I went on this quest to question it. So can you breathe water?
Cannot breathe water. No.
You can't. So do you have a flexibility in the how you get oxygen in your bloodstream? You don't.
I can only get oxygen. That's it.
Okay. So think of the theories we've all been taught. Now we talk about them as if they're true 100%, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now I'm on a 5-day, 6-day fast right now. I'm in day 2 now. I haven't eaten in 2 days, over 2 days. What am I burning right now?
My assumption is fat.
Okay. So now if I eat food, okay, if I eat sugar, okay, what am I going to burn now?
Going by what everybody thinks about it, you're going to burn all the glucose that's stored in your system.
Okay, so now if I'm burning all my glucose, but where does the sugar go after you eat it? It goes in the hepatic portal bloodstream. It goes directly to the liver. What's the liver's job? To make fat. Okay, so now when that sugar hits the epithelial cells of the gut and the hepatic portal system, senses sugar in the bloodstream, it releases insulin from the pancreas. Where does the insulin go, blood-wise? Directly to the liver. Why would all the sugars and amino acids and insulin go directly to the liver? Because the liver's job is to make fat. Now, what's the leading disease of the liver?
Psoriasis or fatty liver disease.
Let's say fatty liver disease. Okay.
Okay.
So now name the primary function of the liver.
Are we going? So just to make fat, right?
Well, no, I'm asking you what you've been taught is the primary function of the liver.
So to detoxify would be one aspect of it, but then also to store, that's where you're going to be able to store most of your energy and tap into that first. And then once those deplete, you're going to tap into the fat cells. That's what's been explained to me.
Well, name a disease that doesn't detoxify.
That does not. I don't know.
Yeah. So if the primary job of the liver is to detoxify, name a disease. You can't. because that's not its job. There are a lot of people that are obese, and the liver's doing a great job in making them that way, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But then they get diabetes, as we labeled it. And we know if you simply stop eating, or you go fasting, or you add more fatty meat and eliminate the plants, you're going to help heal that liver, aren't you? So, in actuality, sugars are toxic to the liver, which prevents the liver from turning over the sugars into fat fast enough. So now, if I've got the same amount of sugar coming into the liver, but now the liver is slower in its ability to make fat, what happens to the systemic glucose levels?
They're gonna
They
start going
rise.
up.
They rise. Now, when glucose goes up, what does insulin do? It goes up. Now we're claiming, well, you have elevated glucose and elevated insulin. You must have insulin resistance. So either the insulin is dysfunctional or the cells that have the receptors on them are dysfunctional. Okay. But you're getting fatter. So somehow that sugar must be getting somewhere. It's being turned over in the liver and made into fat. But now you're developing the diseases from hyperglycemia, not hyperinsulinemia. Now the liver is losing more and more cells. It's becoming more damaged from, we'll call it fatty liver disease. But fatty liver disease is just a description of obesity. Okay. So you have a bunch of fat in your liver because the liver's job is
Make fat.
make fat.
Yeah.
So now you're obese. Okay. So job of your adipocytes is to do what? Store fat.
Yeah.
Store fat, not make fat.
Mm-hmm.
Store fat. Okay. And so now the liver is more dysfunctional to a point you've developed cirrhosis. Guess what you can't make anymore? Fat. And you become emaciated, but you also develop hepatic encephalopathy because you're still eating plants and protein, which the liver's no longer able to turn over and make fat and eliminate the ammonia properly.
It's very interesting because, like you said, like this is theoretical across the board, and I look at this because one of the conversations that we had, we were talking about like fat adapted for athletics, and this was off camera, and you're like, I don't think that's it. I don't think there's no, you're not, you already are fat adapted, but where there's this big push of, and we get two things, and I'm thinking about just athletes at this point is you have athletes that carbo load.
Yep.
Like I got people that I've seen in the gym. They're having gummy worms to just keep their energy up to complete the workouts versus, but there's that piece. And there's people that have gone ketogenic or carnivore and they don't need that. And they can, is it just adaptation in general that we have to get to?
Well, have you ever had caffeine?
Yes.
What does it do to your energy?
Uh, I don't think it does as much anymore, but when I first
but in
started, yeah.
general, people use caffeine to increase their energy. Okay. Think of
Mhm.
epinephrine. If I give you a bolus of epinephrine, does it build you? Does it make your energy greater?
It's adrenaline, yeah, right?
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
Now, does that mean you're burning more fat, making ATP faster? Or there's some other stimulant that's a drug, and maybe plant sugars are simply a drug that you claim is energy, but it's just a drug.
That's a good way to put it because every endurance runner, mainstream, is taking gels, taking whatever, shot blocks, all those things. And
They're
I think about all that. Like that's a lot of carbohydrates getting into the body.
they're legal, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
Right on. So they're just plant sugars. So plant sugars contain caffeine, epinephrine, cortisol, uh, heroin, marijuana, nicotine, name a drug, right? I mean, how many people are just drinking their coffee, their energy drinks all day long, smoking cigarettes or doing their gummies because they want the energy when you use the word energy, you think ATP, don't you? But if I gave you a bolus of epinephrine, is that turning your nanomotors faster or doing something that we don't understand completely? Because it's not pushing, it may be pushing the ATP greater, but how much ATP do you have circulating in your bloodstream right now?
Don't know.
I don't know that answer either. I want a drug, and we know there are a lot of drugs out there. And where do 99.9% of the drugs come from?
Big pharma.
Plants.
Yeah.
Plants. Essentially, today, all the medicinal products we've been circumnavigating the globe looking for more spices and plants in order to make medicinal drugs. Think of traditional Chinese medicine, right? It's all about plants, right? And so ultimately, the plants are the drugs that help us and hurt us more than anything.
Mm. With when we're talking about a proper human diet, right? We're talking about what we're going to be consuming to kind of have, health. But you take a different take on it, and which I kind of like, and it's the Bebe's way, if I'm getting that correct.
Well, it's pronounced babies. Ultimately babies. The bacon, eggs, butter, beef, Kiltz's ice cream and salt. Listen, I'm not opposed to eating some plants sometimes, but you do not want to eat unprocessed plants. You want to process the plants in a way that either soaks them, ferments them, cooks them, kills the microbes that are lining all over the plants, and detoxifies the substances that may be toxic for us, and simplifying the sugars. High glycemic index sugars are what you want, not low glycemic index sugars. And so, why this? Because what's it missing? Plants. Plants contain heroin, cocaine, marijuana, latex, all the drugs that are bad for us in a sense, and fat, butter fat, pork fat, beef fat, milk fat, all are anti-inflammatory. They kill the microbes in the gut. The microbes in the gut are fermenting. They're fermenting in your child's gut, in your elderly relatives' guts, in all of our guts, which makes what? Alcohol. Is alcohol good for us? No, it is not. And so, I like bacon, eggs, butter, beef, salt, and I love ice cream. I make an ice cream with eggs and cream. You don't need anything else. If you want to add a small amount of cane sugar from time to time, I think it's fine, because both protein amino acids and carbohydrate sugars all go to the liver via insulin. They're converted to what?
Fat.
Fat. And in the liver makes LDL, VLDL, and ultimately HDL particles, because ultimately these lipoproteins are packed with cholesterol, with fatty lipids, with amino acids, with simple sugars, and with minerals and vitamins that are then sent all around your body in order to provide every single cell with all the building blocks and molecules that are required. Bears must be fat enough to implant a fertilized egg, and then they must be fat enough in order to go through hibernation. They lose only adipose tissue. They lose no bone mass or muscle mass. I'm sorry, I don't believe we lose muscle mass because we fast. We lose muscle mass because we're not active. And so ultimately, the building blocks of your baby turn out to be adipose tissue. And so the liver's job is to make fat, make the transportation molecules, LDL, VLDL, and HDL. And we name them differently because of their proportion of amino acids, proteins, right? Which then eventually, as it's let go of most of its fat, it becomes a high density lipoprotein in the periphery, because it has very low fat lower fat levels that goes back to the liver, where it's then reprocessed into the VLDL, which is then shipped out to the rest of the body, provide the fat, the cholesterol, the minerals, the vitamins, and the glycans. Glycans are sugars, which are critical for the function of your body, because without sugars, you're dead. But you just never have to eat a plant sugar in order to survive. Because what's interesting, in the cells of the meat you eat are glycans, sugars within every cell of that animal, including you and I, which are critical for the function of every cell of your body.
And do you think, because you're talking about the fasting that we're, oh, if we fast, we're going to lose muscle. Do you think that when you fast, a lot of people are under the assumption that your metabolic rate is just going to tank?
Well, okay, so metabolic rate. So do you want to get a car that is 10 miles a gallon, or do you want to get a car that's 50 miles a gallon?
Let's go 50.
You better believe it. So if you want your metabolic rate to be high, it's actually probably dumb. Same problem. So you're burning too much fuel too fast, which makes oxidative damage, because the burning of fuel makes oxidative damage, correct? Heat, right? And
Mhm.
so ultimately, my metabolic rate is slowing down. Of course it is, because it's not dumb. It's going to say, you know what, take it easy. But you know what? I do my walking, my running, my biking, my swimming, my weightlifting. Now, I don't do it excessively. I do light walking and light weights today, because at almost 70, I realized that the Ferrari cannot go on the racetrack like it used to. And go at it if you want, but ultimately slow it down, cool it down. And the metabolism says, you know what? We got lower fuel coming in. But if you've got to go hunting for a week, 2 or 3 to find food, what's more powerful than anything in the universe? The mind. I can get this body to move and groove. I'm 7-day fasting. I do a 5-day fast every January, July. I am really strong because I practice the mindset. I'm off coffee now for another 3 months. I didn't use coffee at all last year. I enjoy it. It's not the killer, but you know what? Does my body need it? No, it does not. So the mindset, meditation, prayer, reading, listening, this is what I do. And I've got a ton of books that I'm always reading and listening to, because you want to get the mind as the master. So we're too used to, oh, you can't do that, or you've got to do this, rather than saying I can do anything, or
I
I am doing anything.
I think fasting, and I've said this multiple times, is the fasting is a superpower for people because of the mental fortitude. And because the autophagy, great, good, that's all good stuff, and I think that's amazing. But I think when you can fast and you get into situations where there's no good food for you, and if you've done it before, you can easily say, no, I've been here before, and I'll abstain from eating, because we're all in a situation where we go out and we don't want to have pizza, we don't want to eat the junk, but that's all that's there. So by fasting, you kind of get your body, yeah, your body's not gonna, you don't want to eat, you don't want to harm it or feel like junk the next day, but it's the mental fortitude of fasting that's actually, I think, even more of a benefit.
The spiritual practice is the most important thing to do. I don't care if you're vegan, vegetarian, Mediterranean, but I don't care. You practice mindfulness and you will gain infinitely more than you can ever do just on a diet. But when you combine the mindful practice and carnivore, and so I say faith, fasting, and fertile fatty meats, that is the way to get the healthiest you can ever be. So why do I fast? Do you have to do it? No. Is fasting harmful? Generally not, as long as you have enough fat on your body. But if you're anorexic, bulimic, or sarcopenic, and you have very little fat on your body, then fasting is not the best thing. But what's the best food to eat? Fatty meat is the best food to eat, and raw fatty meat is the best, because when you cook meat, you denature much of its particles that may damage them enough that you don't get the full benefits from that. And if you read Pottinger's Cats, you'll get the basic idea that the cats are damaged from cooked meat and pasteurized milk, but they're improved on raw meat and raw milk. In even their subsequent generations are damaged because of that diet, because it damages the eggs, the sperm, the embryo, and the environment that it's going to thrive in the future.
And when you get people on eating, the baby's way, right?
Yeah.
Is there things, are you giving them specific guidelines depending on like who they are or what they're trying to heal, if it's infertility or not? What I mean by that is, are you saying like you should be getting this much grams of fat, or do you like say like this much protein, this much fat, or you kind of just leave it to their being intuitive?
Occam's razor.
Keep it
Simple
simple.
answer is the one. No animal asks, what should I eat? Did you get your minerals and vitamins? Did you eat enough today? Our problem isn't is eating too much in general. I'm not a big fan of just eat intuitively, because intuitively, when you see a lot of food, what do you want to eat? All food. Because evolutionarily speaking, if you found food, you better eat all the fruit off the tree. You better eat as much of that meat as you can, and you're going to do everything you can to protect that meat and be yours and eat it. Because this idea that, oh, I'm just not hungry today, I'm going to wait later, is detrimental to your survival. So our brain is smarter than you know. It sees food, it wants to eat food. And since the majority of carbohydrates were not edible until the fall, and so what are most of the plants we eat today? They're all fall foods, right? They're perfectly ripe as if it's fall. And what do you want to get in the fall? Fat. 100%. The genes that make obesity are actually the survival genes. People that stay skinny easily likely were not the survival genes. They managed to get through because they lived in an environment where they had plenty of resources, most likely. But, look at finding food is hard. Hunting and killing an animal is not easy. No animal is going to just stop and say, oh, pick me. You can take my arms, my legs, and eat me. It's okay. My organ meats. They do, but they can't run and hide. So what do? They make poisons and pesticides that ultimately control and kill you. And they control us. Think about it. We get hangry, depressed because we can't have plants, coffee, tea, whiskey, wine, or beer, or we can't have our pasta or bread. We will do everything we can to get it. When you're carnivore, listen, I got fatty meat everywhere in my freezer and refrigerator. I got butter down in my thing. I like, it's so powerful when you do this. But I don't think anyone should do this, by the way, because there can only be a few lions in the world.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's a little tongue in cheek. Okay. So Jesus Christ came to the world to share a story. The word is the way. And as you think, so shall you be. Have faith in God, because God is all of us. All humans are lions. All of us. I don't care what disease you're suffering from, or size, shape, age, weight, gender, or DNA, you are a lion. And if you eat like a lion, you will feel like a lion. And last I looked, lions are the symbols of strength. I just got back from Spain and France. No matter where you go, lions are the leader symbol of strength. And you and I, we press our muscles to, push them out a little bit, and we show our strength, and lions lead. And so ultimately, everyone can and should eat like a lion, because that's what we are. But is it easy? It is not. It's hard.
In today's day,
Well,
everything's
it's
stacked up against you.
it's always been hard,
Yeah.
because that's how we got to eating plants, because killing animals is hard. Well, because it's meant to be. Those things in life that are the most valuable are the hardest to attain. The last I looked, you're capable of anything. But the first thing you need to do is begin to tell the story to yourself in the mirror. And the more you tell the story that I'm a lion and I eat meat, the more you say, oh, I can't do that or that's too hard, you're right. But if you want to get to the next level, because the last I looked, your DNA is the same as all other successful human beings. And by the way, who wrote the Bibles? We did. We are the gods. We are the great creators of everything in our lives. All you need to do is think as if, and it shall be. I don't care what religion you are, but spirituality is the strength of the universe. And the human brain is the creator of the universe. The brain creates the story. And so all of us can do it. But, we like to use the phrase that there's only a limited number of us, but we're all that, essentially.
I mean, there's most animals in the world, don't have to be told what to eat. They know what they eat, and we're in a position where we have to help our own.
Yeah, and that's what we're here to do. And that's why I'm here. All my websites and all my content is free. You got to buy my books online if you want to buy my books. We have some digital content that's free because my job as a physician is to share the way and the word. And, I'm like a kid in a candy store that just wants to tell everyone, hey, look what we got. This is amazing. And you're not going to believe me because your brain has been so propagandized into the plant-based paradigm, which basically is a story because we love the feeling that plants give us. But when you give them up and you go to the feeling you get from eating fatty meat and one meal a day and you're fasting and you're focusing on positivity, it's a game changer. And so I have so many of my clients conceiving and delivering babies. And my clients are just human beings around the globe that are experiencing the baby's way or the lion's way or the proper human diet way. And none of this is proprietary, in my opinion. I have nothing proprietary here. I've learned it from others. And as a physician, my job, I spent a lot of money to go to medical school, a lot of hardships and challenges. My best friend from medical school died of cancer. My sister died of diabetes, both at 52. And this question is, well, why? A friend of mine just passed recently of cancer. I got so many people that are diagnosed with it. The question is why? It's simple. We're eating the wrong diet for humanity. And if we simply realize that eating fatty meat is the best thing to eat, you'll see the change in life. But that's boring to eat just meat every day, isn't it?
See, that's to me and you, maybe not, but
Well, people say that.
I can eat a ribeye every day.
I eat a ribeye every day.
Yeah.
But here's what I tell people. So variety is the spice of life. If you have 3 or 4 husbands and wives or boyfriends and girlfriends in the same time, is that usually a safe thing? It's deadly. So actually, variety in your food and relationships, intimate anyway, is deadly. I say, just be very discerning of what you put in your mind and your mouth. That's the best way to live.
And I think you mentioned it earlier, and I think this is a great way to think about it too. From time to time, having certain indulgences because it is life and enjoying life is one thing, but where it becomes habitual and I gotta have, that's something totally different.
I mean, there's some things like heroin, cocaine, and marijuana, or you're doing some things that are wrong. Those things can get you fast. And anaphylactic shock, I've never heard of it from meat. I've heard of it from plants, fish, shellfish, but never ribeye steak or fatty meat. And so, yeah, I think that, my time to time, I do a cookie, cake, or ice cream or fries sometimes because they're simple sugars that are metabolized quickly. I eat a lot of fat usually with it, either butter or Kiltz's ice cream. Again, full cream and eggs, very little sugar. And I occasionally might have a martini extra filthy dirty, but 99% I don't touch that stuff. Because is it the immediate killer? It is not. Now, if you overindulge and you go doing something you shouldn't be doing while you're overindulging, like flying an airplane or driving a car, certainly while intoxicated, those are not good things. And alcohol is not good for us. The American College of OBGYN supports women, pregnant, lactating, to consume a plant-based diet and red wine. Those are the experts, the that are authorities giving us advice, and then they're chastising us in the medical field if we give the wrong advice, and we can lose our license or ability to practice in America. That is wrong.
It's backwards.
Extremely
Absolutely
backwards.
backwards.
I again, as a physician, my job is to dig deep and question why. That's why I question sugar as energy, or the function of the liver, or where should we go in here, there. It's we must all question everything. And do we need another scientific study to tell us the answer? Again, read the Bibles, read the philosophy, and listen to those on the internet and social media. But you can never know until you do it. And the practice of the thing, again, it's like, well, maybe I'm gonna go for a walk today and get out in the sunlight and see what happens. Maybe I'm gonna give up all those plants and I'm gonna focus on eating fatty red meat. Last I looked, I've never seen meat in the toilet.
Yeah. That's a side part of carnivore that people talk about, that when you're on carnivore, you don't have to go as much because you're utilizing that
Every
food.
There's no more fiber, which is deadly for us. Fiber
Mm-hmm.
and microbes in your gut are killers. Don't touch it. And then when you heal with fatty meat and you eat less frequently, all the fatty meat is digested and absorbed, and it becomes part of your body. There's very little waste that goes out through the colon and the anus. So I maybe go twice a week, small amounts, no longer bleeding, hemorrhoids, mucus, or pain. So bowel movements that are less frequently are normal on carnivore, and no longer bloating, pain, discomfort.
That's always a question I get when people are interested in whatever, and they're like, "You don't go a lot." I said, "Listen, nobody's winning awards for the most bowel movements."
And, you know, toilet paper is expensive, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
use far less toilet paper. There's no more bleeding or bowel problems. If you wait, you can't stop it from coming out. So everyone's like, I haven't gone. I must have constipated. Constipation is the feeling like you got to go and you're bloated, but you can't get it out.
Mm-hmm.
So carnivore and fasting is like, wow. It's like, oh, I better go. Oh, wait a minute. There was nothing.
Yeah.
And prostates shrink, and thyroids get better, and your brain and your bowels and your everything gets better. And as a fertility specialist, reproduction improves tremendously. And look at we're supposed to be sensual with our partners, patient with our partners. And the numbers don't matter, but it's the quality that matters. And so men's libido, women's libido improves on carnivore, reproduction improves, and it all improves on carnivore.
That this is the way.
This is
Uh,
the way.
Dr. Kiltz, thank you so much for coming on, and just for some of the listeners, where can they find some of your information?
Dr. Kiltz, DoctorKiltz. That's one of the best places. Kiltzy, morning lives at 5 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, most days, some Sundays at 10, and YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. And we got books on Amazon. We look at CNY Fertility, which is the fertility center that I'm proud to be part of. You could just look at cnyfertility.com. But most of it, my joy in life is talking about how to heal you naturally. And we're all in this together. And I'm never here to argue with anyone. I'm just sharing the story. And I'm like a kid in a candy store that just want to yell and scream and tell everyone about.
You actually, this is something that you've said in the past. You're like, this carnivore is like a secret, but you just can't keep it to yourself.
It's the best secret to share and to shout it out. And again, just we go look at the lions and we look at the animals, the tigers. We look at those animals that have the strength, and they're all carnivores. You
Yeah.
are what you eat is the most powerful thing I've ever learned.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for everybody listening to another episode of the Primal Foundations podcast.